Hey everyone, I'm going to try to use my social platforms and reach out to everyone to talk about something that everyone is talking about right now and hopefully give some clarity to how we're going to start fighting racism at its roots. But first, I just want us to go back about 4 months when we realized that COVID-19 had gripped us at the neck and was taking us hostage. We reacted. Some countries reacted a little slowly. We in Canada took precautions and then we responded, and the response ended up being swift enough to hopefully have countered COVID-19 so that it wasn't worse than it could have been. The world all over took on COVID-19 and stopped everything in our tracks. We took precautions, we took actions, they were swift. We shut down economies, we shut down borders, we shut down the entire world because we were fighting a virus that was killing everyone, right? Racism is a more virulent virus. It is one that has plagued us for centuries, and it will continue to plague us unless we take swift, immediate, long-term actions to stop racism at its roots. Right now, when we're talking about what we're going to do next, talk about unconscious bias and sensitivity training, great start. We don't need band-aid solutions. To fight systemic and institutionalized racism, we have to go to the roots. We started with education, we have to continue with education. And what I'm about to say here is probably a very controversial point that the people that I'm speaking up for and supporting, people from marginalized communities, people of color, the Black community, everyone is calling for defunding the police right now because we want to fight police brutality. And I agree, we need to fight police brutality, but we don't need to defund. Please hear me out. We need more money put into policing because we need the right kind of policing. To say that every single police officer is actually engaging in racism would be wrong. We have enough. Definitely in the States, we have a bigger issue, but in Canada, we have enough bad apples that are representing everyone else, unfortunately. So it only takes one person to die a horrible death because of racism for us to recognize that there's something wrong with the system. That doesn't mean every single person who is part of the system is actually complicit in the activities that are plaguing that system. So why we need more money, why we can't defund the police, start out there. Because we need education. We need to make sure that police officers are well trained, that they represent communities. They come from the communities that they are servicing and policing, that there's equal representation, equitable representation, that I can see myself in the police officers who are policing our communities, that a person of color can see themselves in the police officers who are policing those communities, that people from our indigenous communities can see themselves in the police officers who are policing those communities. We need to make sure that policing services are not tokenism. They are not picking people just based on their color or their creed or whatever they represent, so that they can say we've got 1 or 2 officers who are Black or are Muslim or are Jewish, whatever, because now we've got representation. We need to make sure every single police officer has an understanding and is educated around what it means to be othered, what it means to be from a different culture, what it means to be from a different country. Police officers probably have to be the most trained individuals on this planet so that they can understand how to uphold the law that you and I have to respect and abide by every single day. We have been jailed in our homes. Our civil liberties have been taken away for 4 months because we're fighting a virus. I don't mind feeling more confined if you tell me that we have to put measures in place to fight racism. But let's make sure that they work. Let's make sure that we're on the same side. Let's make sure that when we're confining ourselves to look at the enemy in the face, that the enemy that you and I are looking at is not each other. That we understand that the enemy is ignorance, that the enemy is hate, that the enemy is shooting first, asking questions later. No, it's shooting first and not asking questions. We have to understand that these practices, wherever they take place, in the US, in Canada, anywhere in the world, they need to stop. And so you don't take money away from the services that need to protect our communities. You put money into them. You don't take money away from vulnerable communities, people dealing with mental health and substance abuse, and blame them and shoot them and say that they were committing crimes. You need to help reform and re-educate. This is why it's not a band-aid solution. Yes, like I wrote in my article earlier this weekend in New Canadian Media, we do need to start with unconscious bias and sensitivity training, and everybody who is working with the public, from police officers to judges to teachers and board trustees, anyone who is interacting with the public needs to go beyond their bias to understand how to deal with each other. But this is just the start. You don't change the world unless you take drastic action and know where you want to land. And when we fought COVID, we knew we had to shut down everything that was causing us pain, agony, and defeat in the face of a dangerous killer. We need to do the same. Now, I'm not suggesting we shut down the world, but I'm suggesting that we shut down our racist and systemically institutionalized racist societies and institutions and the practices that have for centuries colonized, systematically killed and inflicted mental, emotional, and physical and fatal wounds on entire communities and people who are marginalized, enslave them. We need to stop. You don't take money away from that. You put money to make sure that it's done right. Education is going to take a while. And we start with you and I. We start with our children. We start with the history that is never written in the point of view and in the perspective of truth. It's always written in the perspective of the victor. So we stop calling people that we are systematically racist against the people that we're hurting the most. We stop creating histories and stories about what they didn't do, and we need to start celebrating what they did do. We look at Halifax and how we burned down schools and churches because this is where people from African background and black people congregated. We look today to how when a white person, somebody who's privileged, goes in and kills people in a mosque or in a synagogue or in a church, they are treated with utmost respect. They are handcuffed and treated like someone with a mental illness. But when it is somebody who is of color, they are shot, they are killed, we kneel on their neck, we prevent them from being able to breathe, we take away their life. We don't even give them the opportunity to answer questions that we could have asked. So we need to educate our policing services, and we start there. We educate our teachers, we educate trustees, we educate our elected officials. We make sure that every single person understands what it's like to be black, what it's like to be Muslim, what it's like to be Jewish, what it's like to be Chinese, what it's like to be the son of an immigrant who was kicked out of Canada not only 50 years ago. We need to tell and talk about our history. So, to all of us who are saying that we need change, I agree. But let's think about the long term. We need the right sort of change where we're not finger pointing, where we're holding ourselves accountable, where we're being transparent, where we're having conversations, when we're telling each other what we need to hear, when we're walking together. I've seen so many images of police officers kneeling on their knees and embracing the people on the other side. If you prick us, do we not bleed? We are all from the same tribe. We are all the same people. What we need is to defund the racist and systemic institutions that have forever plagued our countries, that have been at the root of our colonization, that have been at the root of who we are as a nation. We need to rewrite those laws. We need to make sure they are representative of who we are as a community and as a society today. And yes, if that does start with cultural sensitivity training, if that starts with unconscious bias, that's a good start. But don't end the conversation. Go further. What are your milestones? What's your 5-year plan? Where do we want to be in 5 years? What kind of police system do we want in 5 years? You're not going to change a police system overnight, people. But where do you want to be in 5 months? Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Mothers of black men, tell your children to come out and force the governments to listen to them and to say that they need to be educated. And if they can't afford education, make education affordable so they can go and become police officers. So they can see themselves and they can have empathy to the people that they work with. And I bet you they will. Mothers of white men, tell your children that they are no different than the black men. All mothers can feel the pains of and the pangs of childbirth. We bring children into this world, and a child who is 10 to look himself in the mirror and say, what have I done to bring about the hatred that I'm going to experience in a few years? From where do I go to being cute to being a killer? We need to take away this weight that children of color and in marginalized communities and the indigenous communities are feeling and living with every single day. And that starts with education. That starts with you and me talking about it, acknowledging it, not blaming, but acknowledging and saying, what am I doing to contribute to it? My ignorance and turning away and not thinking that I have something to do with it means that I don't want to change it. My hands aren't bloodied, but my conscience can be if I look away. So please, we need to work together. We need to remember that even though we may come from many different backgrounds, we form one nation, and that's humankind. So let's look at our shared humanity and find humility in that shared humanity. Let's work together. Let's work hard. Let's make lasting change. And just like we are fighting COVID and hopefully coming out of a recovery, we need to fight racism and come out of that recovery as well. And the only way to do it is for you and I to stand on the same side and to work together against the enemy. And the enemy is not you and I, it's not color. The enemy is racism. And that is the worst virus.